I'm going to make a mark at 7 seconds because that is where I'm going to be jumping in to talk to you guys about the next element of playing Savage Worlds. And this is part of learning how to game master because you're going to be okay. Anyway, you're going to be needing to know how to run combat in your system. And that, well, let's start with this. So first of all, welcome to the Ace Role Playing Games channel. I'm your host, Mason Emerson, and I'm the founder of the Ace Role Playing Games Club's system. And what that is it's a system or a way for you as teens to set up your own role-playing game clubs and to be able to make your own fun. I teach you how to game master, and then you just take it from there. So here at Ace Role Playing Games, we're gaming for good. Picking up in this series of how to run Savage Worlds and therefore also how to game master, I am going to be, I hope, interspersing stuff from the camera up here, my phone. So, really high tech here. Anyway, actually, it's incredibly high tech. I got to pause real quick and just say, wow, it is amazing living in the future. Because it turns out that here in the future, we have computers that we can put in our pockets and we can take pictures with them and we can talk on them. And I have only barely been around as long as cell phones have. Since that first Motorola call was made. I'm a little bit younger than that. And that is just amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And I got to say, I am grateful to live in a time and age when I can do this. So what I'm going to talk about today is combat. Now, a role-playing game lets us play a character who's not us, and it allows us to do things that the not us would do. So, as an example, many people don't really know how to fight. And oftentimes, a role-playing game will devolve into a fight. And that's just the nature of what it is. You guys are going to be the forces of good standing against the forces of evil. And in some role-playing games, you might be the forces of evil standing against the forces of good. But that's because in those ones, good is dumb, to quote a silly movie. But remember also, there are other skills on your sheet that aren't necessarily combat skills that will make your story better. So what I have going over here is my camera pointing down at a black notepad I have, because I'm going to try and show my rolls and my cards that I play on this. Now, for the purposes of this, let's talk distance. Now, most of what Savage Worlds has translates into distances in inches on a square grid map. Now, that being said, I tend to use what's called theater of the mind. And that's a big phrase that you're going to need to get used to in any role-playing game. And that's theater of the mind. The way theater of the mind works is you imagine it. It's just like playing any other imaginary game. You just imagine what it would look like and you try and describe things from there. So putting a note here to remember to put this in at 4:15. Okay. So theater of the mind, when we use our imaginations to set the stage and set everything else. And the way it basically works is it eliminates the need for mats and miniatures. Because you can use mats and miniatures. I don't mind you using mats and miniatures. I'm not going to stop you because that's what we do sometimes. And it's nice to have maps and miniatures sometimes. However, I like to have instead pictures to show things and set the scene and set the stage and give people things to start imagining. Because sometimes I'm not going to draw on the map a pillar of a big warehouse that you could hide behind for cover. I'm not going to show that. But if your imagination takes you there and you say, are there any pillars around as you're getting shot at? Yes. I'm going to go behind the nearest one and I'm going to try and use that. And I can say, okay, I'll give you partial cover for that. Or I'll give you a bit of cover for that. And that's good use of the terrain. And you should encourage that from your players. If you have players who ask you questions like that, give them a Benny, if you remember from last time. So, first of all, let's talk distance. On a table, 1 inch is about, give or take, 3 yards. So, you have, well, actually, no, I'm being wrong again here. So, maybe cut that little bit out. Okay, so I'm going to go to page 97 in the book where it talks about the way because I don't tend to use miniatures. So here's kind of what you're going to be looking at. It's on page 97 of your Savage Worlds book, which I hope you've all been able to pick up one for now. And it's got a thing on templates without miniatures. So actually, I will go right back to the top of the combat here. Okay, so 1 inch is equal to 2 yards. That's where I was wrong. So 1 inch in Savage Worlds is equal to 2 yards. So 1 yard is approximately 3 feet. In American measurements, it is 3 feet. So it's approximately a meter is where you kind of get in there. So you get about 2 meters or 2 yards or 12 feet, not 12 feet. I can do math, I promise. 36 feet. No, 36 inches or 6 feet of movement. That's what you get. So 36 feet comes from the fact that most characters have a pace of 6. So they can move about 36 feet in a turn. So, and that's about the height of 3 people, give or take. Set that up in your imagination. And then throw it out. Because here's the much easier way of doing this. And I learned this from one of the first podcasts I listened to. And that is, you want to set up dramatically appropriate distance. When somebody says, how far am I away from that person? You say dramatically appropriate distance. But what you basically have, and I'm stealing this whole cloth from Index Card RPG, you basically have a long distance. A long distance means you have to run. And that's all. And if you're going to run and do an action in the turn, and I'll get to the actions in a minute. But if you're going to run and do an action in a turn, that's going to take your entire movement, and it's going to take a little bit more. And then you're going to make your roll at a penalty. So that's the first step. Second, sorry, I didn't want to do that. I bumped my stand on my tripod. So that's going to have a bump there. Anyway, what's going to happen here is if you just move, then you're only going to move that about, give or take, 36 feet. And so you're going to be able to just move and do an action, or you can do that flat out run, like I said. So there's going to be long distance, which is the distance of complete. You could have outside of long distance. So there's no way if they ran, they could even get there. You can have long distance, which is if you run, you can get there. You can have distance, which is if you move, you can get there. And you can have close distance, which is you're almost in melee combat with each other, just a little bit outside of that. And then you can have up front in melee combat that's almost touching each other. So that's where distance kind of comes into this. Time is important in a role-playing game for how to figure out approximately how long each round takes. And a round is considered in Savage Worlds the entire countdown from ace to deuce. And I will explain that in just a second when I start explaining adventure or action cards. A turn is when your character acts in that round. And then an action is a single attack or use of a skill. So, and in Savage Worlds, you can actually, in a turn, taking penalties, you can not only perform one action, but you can perform two actions and actually three actions. And I'll get to the negative penalties that apply there in a minute. So, first of all, let me introduce you to the Savage Worlds action deck. This is the actual official oversized action deck. However, if all you have is a regular deck of playing cards, these work as well. This happens to be my Bicycle Aesir pack. So they are the trumps are they are very much along the lines of the Norse gods. And they're pretty cool looking. And you want to leave at least 2 jokers in the deck. If you have a deck and you want to put 4 jokers in for the swinginess of the action, that's good too. Because you remember, I mentioned Joker's Wild in the Benny episode. And that is an important thing. So maybe I think I'm going to take a couple episodes on combat. But first of all, I want to make sure that you're introduced to the action deck. Now, as a bit of a card snob, I'll admit to being one. I shouldn't be as much anymore, but I still am. I love bicycle decks. Bicycle brand playing cards, pretty much any card made by the United States Playing Card Company. They are the United States Playing Card Company. When they put their air cushion finish on these things, they glide so well. They shuffle well, they deal well. They have the right thickness to be able to handle multiple shuffles, but they're also the right thinness to be able to not be too much of a hassle. And they're the right thinness and thickness and slickness to be able to shuffle them back together. These are, as far as playability, as far as being able to show what I'm after, I like Bicycle the best. I like them also good. They're also very good for laying out a chase track, but I'll get to that in a little bit too. Second best are these oversized action cards, actually. These are really nice. You can buy the pack separately from Pinnacle, and they got really great art on them and things like that. And then there's like a Joker from there. That's really cool, and that definitely lets you know. And when you're playing with oversized cards at a table at like a con or something like that, you're really doing well. And I'm sorry to my friends at Pinnacle for this, but I highly recommend somebody, if they want to purchase the Deadlands oversized action deck, do so, but do so for the artwork. You're not going to want to play with them because they're about a micrometer thinner than the oversized action deck that came with the Essentials box set or that you can buy separately on Pinnacle's site. And the cards just, they bend too easily. They're too weak. They just don't shuffle well. They don't fan at all. They stick to each other. And I mean, yeah, with some baby powder, I could kind of improve that. But the main thing I want to talk about decks is this. You can get almost any kind of deck. So I showed you this Aesir one. I have in my drawer here, I have other ones. I have, I can't see them right now. Okay, this is pulling out, right? And of course, this being the normal scatterbrain Mason. I have a robot deck in here. Here is a deck of Tally-Ho cards, also from the U.S. Playing Card Company. These ones have a linoid finish, but and I use these for a magic trick that I do, and it's basically we start with the 4 aces, and I go from there, and I do a cool card transfer trick. Anyway, but these are Tally-Ho, and they got a cool back on them. And you can see also they fan really nicely. So if you're a bit of a card snob like me, get yourself several bicycle decks, but also get yourself, buy the Pinnacle decks. They're cool. They're definitely cool. Now there's another kind of deck called the Adventure deck that I will get to in a minute. But what we do in an action on the initiative turn is we deal cards to designate initiative. Other games might roll a d20. Other games might have you roll a d20 every turn. And whichever way you want to determine it, that's how you determine initiative. So once you have the initiative determined, if you have, let me set up this scenario here, and I'll show it on this camera because I'm probably going to not use the footage of that one today. Okay, so let's say I have dealt one player a King of Hearts and one player a King of Spades. Cool art, by the way. Anyway, so if those are dealt in that order, what's cool about the Savage Worlds action deck, sorry, I dropped a card, is that at the bottom, and I'll try and get it as close to the camera as I can, you can see it goes Spades, Hearts, Diamonds, Clubs. That's reverse alphabetical order. So the King of Spades will go before the King of Hearts. And that's how you determine how you break ties. And then you just, the combat goes. These action cards, like I said, you leave both jokers in, add in extra ones if you want to. And what happens is I take the deck and I shuffle it. And I usually even cut it again, going back to my Magic days, because I was a professional magician for a bit. So that's hence the card snobbery. Anyway, and then I deal to each player. Oh, look at that Joker right there on top. That's the black Joker. Anyway, so I deal to each one of the players in the round an action card. Then, so say I had 4 players and that's what I just dealt. Then I deal for my bad guy group. They're going to all act on this 6 of diamonds. And the wild card bad guy gets his own card. Oh, he got a 2 of spades. Not happy. Now, I could use one of his bennies because he gets 2 bennies of his own. I could use one of his bennies to say, you know what? It's very important that I'm not even going to try because somebody's already got a joker. So when that joker is dealt in an action round, in a initiative round, the first thing that happens is everybody gets a benny. All of the players get a benny, and whoever has the joker can choose whenever they want to go in the round, interrupt any action that's going on. And on top of that, they can now get a +2, which if you remember, target number typically being 4, they get a +2 on all their actions. Now, I'm going to end this little video segment talking about multi-actions. Multi-actions mean that you can do your attack or do an action and a skill or whatever, a multi-action, or run an attack. But you multi-action by taking a -2 for each attack in the additional action. So if you do 2 attacks, it's going to be a -2 to each of those. But if you do 3 attacks, it's a -4 to each of those. But if you're rolling hot, why not? But what's cool is when you get the joker and you get that +2. Well, then joker's wild and you get your +2. So if you take 2 actions, that's still at a 0. You don't get the +2, you just get a 0 across the board. And that's where it's pretty cool. That's where I love the initiative system in Savage Worlds. I think it's the best initiative system out there. And yeah, I'm going to have to do this camera bit another time. But I just wanted to check in with you guys and just give you the next boost on the way to becoming game masters in Savage Worlds and better game masters in your own games. So this has been fun. It always is. If nobody's told you this today, I love you. And the world is a better place because you're in it. So that said, remember, this is Ace Role Playing Games, where we achieve, create, and entertain. And we're gaming for good.